Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Georgia from Georgia's Cakes, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to make macaroons. Now before I start, I'm just going to clear something up for you all. People say macaroon and people say macaron. Now there is a difference. Macaron is actually what I'm going to be making, but I feel awkward saying it, so I'm just going to say macaroon. So in the title it says macaron, but I'm saying macaroon. There is actually a difference. Macaroon is, I think, the Italian version, which is like one biscuit with a bit of almond in, and the macaron is the French take where there's two almost meringues that are sandwiched together and make the delicacy that I'll be showing you today. So for macaroons, we need 100 grams of icing sugar, 100 grams of ground almonds, 100 grams of caster sugar, a little cold water, and eggs, which we're going to separate in a bit, and I'll tell you all the measurements. And also, all the measurements are in the comments below, so make sure you scroll to see all of them. So to get started, I've got a nice big bowl here with a sieve on top, and I'm going to put the icing sugar into the sieve. Now rather than shaking the sieve and getting a cloud full of sugar in your face, I've got a little trick up my sleeve, and I just use the bottom of a glass, put it in the sieve and just move the glass around, and that makes all the icing sugar full without the cloud. There we go. How great was that? It will change your life, I promise. So now we're going to go in with the ground almonds, also in the sieve, because we just want to get rid of any lumps in there or any larger bits, because we want this mixture to be as smooth as possible. Any larger bits like this, I'm just going to push through, and if they're too large for the sieve, I'm just going to discard them. So actually, when I measure out the ground almonds, I always go a couple of grams over, because they usually are larger pieces like this. So I'm just going to stir the sugar and almonds just to incorporate them. So it's a really fine, like sand-like consistency. And now I'm going to separate the eggs. For this, we're going to need 2 separate egg whites, one to go into the bowl and one to whisk up as meringue. So I always weigh it because we need 35 grams of egg white, and I always save the yolk because we're going to need that for the filling. So this is the first egg. The second one. And just make sure that there's absolutely no yolk in either of the egg whites. So again, keep your yolks for the next part, so I'm just going to pop them in the fridge. So my first egg white is going to go in the stand mixer with a whisk attachment. You just want to make sure that the bowl is 100% clean, otherwise the meringue won't whisk up. And the other egg white is going to go into the sugar and almond mix that we made just before. I'm just going to mix that, and it's going to form like a thick paste, so just make sure it's all mixed in. So this is the texture that you're looking for. It's like a thick paste, it's a bit moist, not too dry, not too wet. And that can just stay on the side while we get on with the meringue. Okay, so for the meringue, I've got a small pan here. I'm going to put in my caster sugar and cover it with just a tiny bit of water, just so it has that little bit of covering. About 25 milliliters. It sounds funny, but just stick your finger in and just give it a whirl, and just make sure that none of the sugar stuck to the bottom. Okay, so now we need to heat this to 118 degrees, and in sugar stages that's called soft ball, and the way to test it if you don't have a thermometer is quite a dangerous way, so I'm just going to put that out there, but if you get a bowl of ice, make your hand numb. Quickly take a bit of the sugar straight back into the ice, and it forms like a soft sugary ball, but I would just get a thermometer because I don't want you to burn yourselves, so please don't sue me if you do, because that was my warning. So on the heat it goes, and yeah, just going to get it to 118 degrees. Okay, so while the sugar's boiling, I'm going to put the meringue on to whisk, and we want it nice and fluffy before we add the sugar. So the sugar has come to temperature, the meringue has started to froth, and this is the time to put the sugar into the whisk. So I'm going to turn the speed down and pour the sugar onto the side of the bowl, trying to avoid hitting the whisk, otherwise it splashes everywhere. And then turn it up back high and let it whisk until it's cool. So the meringue's done. You can tell because it's come back to room temperature, and you get this really nice, stiff, peaked meringue. And what the hot sugar has done is actually cooked the egg white. I'm going to take that off and just tap off the excess off the whisk. And now we need to incorporate the meringue into the almond mix that we made before. And the best way to do this is in stages. So I'm going to go in with about 1/3 of the meringue, put it into the almonds mix and mix that through. This is just easier to make sure that all the mix is mixed in thoroughly. And you get all these rumours like, oh, you shouldn't mix the macaroon mix more than 30 times and you know, all these sorts of things. I've never noticed such thing. As long as you don't whisk it like crazy, because almonds eventually release their oils and start to change the texture, it's fine. I think if you're doing it by hand, you don't have that risk. The best way to fold it is to just kind of scoop the whole thing up and then fold it onto itself. Go through the middle and back like that. It's almost like you do an O and then an 8 in my head. That makes sense. So that's all combined, and the consistency you want is kind of like a slow moving mix, and the way to test it is just pick it up on your spatula and it should drop. 1, 2, 3. So like 3-second rule basically. And yeah, so if it's a bit too wet, you can add a bit more icing sugar, and if it's really dry, then add a slightly more egg white into it. Now you can leave it white if you want the natural colour, but I'm gonna make them pretty and pink by adding some gel food colouring in. Again, it's up to you how much or little you want. I wouldn't put too much in because it changes the consistency. Gel food colouring is quite strong though, so I'm literally going to put a couple of drops in. And that's all you need. And I also would definitely advise the gel food colouring over liquid so the consistency doesn't change so much. I'm just going to mix that colour through. So now it's time to fill the piping bag. I have a plain round nozzle at the end of a piping bag, so it's a small circle. You can get smaller or large ones depending on the size of the macaroons you want. Now what I do, I twist the end like this, and that supposedly prevents any air bubbles. And that I put into a long vessel. In this case I'm using my fancy vase, which I stole from my mum, so don't tell her. That's my best kitchen tool. And wrap the piping bag around, and then you don't have to hold it and try and fill the mix. So into the piping bag it goes. Pull it out. And then just twist the top, and that just makes sure none of the mix falls out the end. So now we're ready to pipe. I've prepared a lined baking tray, so I've got baking parchment on the bottom, which I've stuck down with these genius inventions of small magnets. You can put some macaroon mix underneath the paper to make it stick, but I can't be bothered to wash the tray after, so I prefer doing this. And this just prevents the paper from blowing all over the place if you're using a fan oven. So what I'm going to do is pipe, I always say about £2 coin size circles along the paper. You can go bigger or smaller if you want. And this should make about 20 macaroons. So you want 40 circles because we're going to pair them up. So just place it about a centimetre away from the tray, squeeze, stop, and then you want to flick them off like that. And this is freehand. I've done it quite a few times, so I'm confident with sizing, but you can get a template and put it underneath the tray and like trace the size, which probably makes a lot more sense. So I'm piping in alternate spaces. A chef once told me that the air in the oven circulates better. So I always do it like that, and it's also easy to count. So they do spread out slightly, so you just want to make sure that they're all a good distance apart from each other. And once they're piped, you want to bang the tray about 3 times, and that's also going to release any air bubbles to the surface. So apologies, neighbours. Okay, that looks good to me. So I'm just going to leave them to sit for about 20 minutes, and what's going to happen is they form a little skin over the top, and the way to test it is just to touch it, and you don't want any mix coming onto your finger. So I'm just going to chill them at room temperature until the skin's formed. So I've left the macaroons skinning, and now it's a good time to make the filling. That rhymes. That's so much fun. Okay, anyway, we need 90 grams of caster sugar. We've got the egg yolk from before, and that's going to be 45 grams. And then 125 grams of softened butter. And then you can add any flavour you want. I'm just going to add a touch of vanilla, or you can use pistachio paste or some chocolate. It's a really good recipe, and you can literally add any flavour you want. And it's good to match the colour up too. So if you're making pink macaroons, I probably should have done like raspberry or something, but if you're making purple, do lavender and all sorts. Anyway, let's go on with the filling. So I'm going to put the egg yolk into the mixer bowl, again with the whisk attachment. This is called French buttercream because we make almost like what we did with the Italian meringue, but with the egg yolks. So we're going to heat the sugar next. So I'm going to put the caster sugar into the saucepan. And again, we need to reach that to 118 degrees Celsius, and I'm just going to top that with a bit of water. So I'll start whisking the yolks and heating the sugar, and again, once it reaches 118 degrees, I'm going to pour it onto the side of the bowl and mix it into the yolks. The yolks have really lightened up. I've turned down the mix, and I'm going to pour the sugar in now. Turn it up and leave it to cool completely. So the yolk and sugar is completely cooled, and that's like the texture you want. It's like really light, which is great. And now I'm going to keep whisking it and incorporate the softened butter bits at a time. I'm just going to scrape down the sides to make sure all the butter's in and give it another mix. Once all the butter's incorporated, you get a really nice light buttercream texture, which is exactly what we're looking for. And again, I'm going to flavour mine with vanilla. Here I've got the seeds of a vanilla pod, and because I bulk buy my vanilla, I just tend to scrape out all the seeds, put it into a container with a bit of vodka, and it just preserves it. And I'm almost making my own vanilla extract, and it just saves you scraping the seeds out every time. Again, flavour it however you like. Just going to give that another whisk through. And you can see all the little tiny vanilla seeds in there, which means it's packed full of flavour. And the best way to fill macaroons is to use a piping bag. And look how white it's got as well. It's such a great way to use those egg yolks. Otherwise they just go to waste. That's filled, and that should be enough to fill the same amount that you just made of the macaroons. And I have put a round piping nozzle just at the end, just because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. You can do star nozzles or just keep it plain and just cut the piping bag. It's completely up to you. I'm just going to leave that to the side and check on the macaroons. So the macaroon shells have skinned, and you can see because none of the mix is going onto my finger when I'm touching it, which is exactly what we want. So they're going into a preheated oven of 135 degrees Celsius for about 12 to 15 minutes. And what you're looking for is that they'll rise and have this little crown around the edges on the bottom. and they're gonna stop wobbling. And that is kind of the only way I can describe it to you. It's basically that the outside has cooked and they're gonna have a nice base to them when you take them off, but the inside is gonna be nice and chewy. So I'm just gonna go pop them in the oven. So the macarons have been cooked and I've left them to cool, and as soon as they came out of the oven, I actually took the piece of paper off the tray, otherwise the hot tray keeps cooking the macarons, and they are perfectly cooked. I tested them by doing this wobble that I was talking about, and they had just set, and that's the exact time you want to get them out of the oven. And if I peel one off, you've got that really nice base underneath as well, which is exactly what we want. So now I'm going to pair them and match the sizes. Because I did it freehand, some might be slightly smaller than others. I like that. If you want them all exact, then use the template like I said. So yeah, I'm just going to match this. For example, with this one, just check the size. That's great, and I'll line it up like this. Okay, so I've picked out the best ones, and I'm just going to turn one of the sides upside down because I find it easier to pipe the filling into. So I've got my vanilla buttercream here, and all you want to do is push through a nice amount, leaving a space around the outside, and then you get the other half and sandwich it together. You just want to squash it until the filling reaches the edge of the macaroon.